You took your first breath in 1985 on the steep and narrow streets of the Santo Antonio neighborhood in the city of Funchal, on the island of Madeira. Madeira was a volcanic rock located in Portugal's most remote corner, cut off from the mainland by the sea, smelling of sea salt. The houses in your neighborhood were jammed together, and because the streets were so steep, when it rained, the water would flow down like a river. Life began for you in the hardest mode possible, friend. You came into the world as the fourth and last child of the family in a small three-room house. Your father, Jose Diniz Aveiro, was a man who worked as a gardener and equipment manager at the local sports club Andorinha. He had no steady income, and he struggled with alcohol dependency. Your father's silence was, at times, the loudest, heaviest thing in the house. Your mother, Maria Dolores dos Santos, on the other hand, tried to earn income by going to wealthy families' homes to clean and cook. She would leave home in the darkness of morning and return exhausted in the evening. Even the name given to you was not ordinary. Your father, naming you after the man he considered the most powerful in the world at the time, U.S. President Ronald Reagan, gave you the name Ronald, Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro. Who knows? Perhaps your father, in giving you that name, was unknowingly foreseeing that you would one day become a powerful man, and leaving that as a legacy to you. Your mother, due to the difficulty of her pregnancy and your family's economic situation, had even considered having an abortion before giving birth to you. Years later, you told this truth to the entire world yourself, in an interview, unable to hold back your tears. Your dinners at home were generally simple: bread, garlic soup, sometimes pasta. Even drinking milk was most of the time a luxury for you. Your first contact with football began before you had even properly learned to walk. Your sisters Elma and Katia, and your brother Hugo, recount that you would kick anything that came within reach. A ball of cloth, an empty tin can, even sometimes a shoe would turn into a ball for you. Even at 3 or 4 years old, you would stumble and fall while chasing a ball in front of your house. By the time you turned 7, you had a ball of your own, even if it was old. On the narrow streets of Santo Antonio, sometimes with friends, sometimes alone, sometimes against a wall, you played with that ball for hours. And by continuing this way, you came to understand that the only language in which you could express yourself was football. When you turned 8, you became an officially registered player wearing a jersey at Andorinha, the club where your father worked. The coaches watching you noticed something. Your relationship with the ball was very different from that of your peers. While other children tried to control the ball, you moved forward as if the ball were glued to your foot. Your school life, however, was a different story. In class, you were a quiet, distracted, disinterested student. Your mind was always on the field. In the eyes of your teachers, you were a strange, ill-fitting student. One day, in a sudden fit of anger, you threw a chair at your teacher. This incident resulted in a disciplinary punishment. And one day, this uncontrolled anger of yours would transform into an ambitious and determined force, channeled entirely into winning on the field. Your circle of friends was not very wide. You were generally alone, because your obsession was entirely football. While your peers played games, you would run off to training. While they watched television, you would be shooting at a goal. Some neighbors found this obsession of yours strange, while others deep down said, "There's something about this kid." When you turned 10, you transferred to Nacional, the biggest and most established club on Madeira. The coaches who watched you there said that what they saw on the field was not a child running around, but seemingly a warrior fighting. At this age, your physical development was more advanced than your peers. The explosive power output of your leg muscles, that is, your capacity to generate maximum force in a short time, stood out in childhood development measurements. When you turned 12, you experienced one of the greatest turning points of your life. The Sporting Lisbon Academy in Lisbon sent a scout to Madeira to see you. Following an intensive 3-week trial period, the academy's management made its decision to go ahead with the transfer. One of the coaches who discovered you wrote a note in his report to management. "There is something in this kid that the others don't have. He enters the field with anger. He runs after every ball as if his life depended on it." This sentence showed that the thing that set you apart from hundreds of other children in the entire academy was not just technique, but the suppressed, silent anger and hunger within you. You were forced to be torn away from the island where you were born, the home where you grew up, and the family you loved so deeply. At 12 years old, you were sent, all alone as a child, to a great city, Lisbon. Other academy students could meet up with their families weeks later and ease their longing. But because you had come from across the sea, you couldn't see anyone for months. You probably had tears that soaked your pillow at night, missing your home, your mother's voice, the salty air of the island. But when morning came, when you went out onto the training field, you would run as if nothing had happened. One of your coaches later recounted, "We used to hear you crying at night." But when morning came, he would run on the field as if nothing had happened. At the academy, while other children went to the dining hall or to their rooms once training ended, you would stay alone on the field and continue training by practicing shots. What one coach said about you was perhaps the sentence that best described you. The others were talented, but he was different in his hunger. When you turned 15, the harshest test of your life arrived. During a training session in the middle of the field, you noticed that your heart had suddenly started racing at an abnormal rate, and that you were experiencing dizziness and shortness of breath. Sporting Lisbon's medical staff immediately referred you to the hospital. The doctors made a diagnosis: tachycardia. The news the doctors gave was heavy. If this condition were not treated, your football career could end right there, and even your life could be at risk. In a small hospital in Lisbon under local anesthesia, you underwent a procedure called catheter ablation. This was not open-heart surgery, but it was traumatic enough for a 15-year-old child. Listen, this part is very important, friend. Even as you lay on that operating table, the only thing on your mind was getting back onto the field as soon as possible. Most people would be devastated in such a situation at that age. But you, only days after undergoing this difficult procedure, while still feeling slight dizziness, went back to the training field to reunite with the ball. In 2002, at 17 years old, you officially made your first professional appearance with Sporting Lisbon's first team. In the same season, you also scored your first professional goal. Congratulations. The years of disciplined work at the academy, the pains endured, the deep longing you felt for your family, had now begun to pay off. When you received your first salary, instead of spending the money on yourself, you sent it to your family, because your priority was improving your mother's and father's living conditions. This was not a simple gesture, friend. This was a sense of debt that impoverished childhood had taught you. It was a repayment, growing step by step, for the sacrifices your family had made for you. In the summer of 2003, at 18 years old, the true turning point of your life arrived. Manchester United came to Lisbon for the opening match of Sporting Lisbon's new stadium. The performance you displayed in that match, your dribbling, your speed, your courage, left the experienced English stars utterly astonished. After the match, in the locker room, Manchester United's senior players went to manager Sir Alex Ferguson and said, "Let's not let this kid go, let's sign him right away." Within a few days, the transfer process was quickly completed. You transferred to Manchester United for £12.24 million, one of the record fees of that era for an 18-year-old young player. On your back, you put on the legendary number 7, once worn in the club's history by George Best, Eric Cantona, and David Beckham. The first years you spent at Manchester were not for you a pure story of triumph. The psychological pressure in the first steps of fame was naturally heavy. Your teammates, especially experienced leaders like Roy Keane, openly stated that you held on to the ball too much, that you played individually, that you didn't pass enough. In some matches, even your own fans booed you, finding your performance lacking and insufficient. For an 19-year-old young man, facing such open criticism on a stage watched by millions was truly a difficult burden, not an easy one at all. But you turned every criticism you heard into fuel that gave you strength in training. You woke up earlier for training in the mornings and left the field later than your teammates in the evenings. This period hardened you, both as a footballer and as a person. Behind the bright face of fame, there was the struggle of a young man who felt the constant obligation to prove himself. By the time 2008 arrived, you were no longer that criticized young man. That season you scored exactly 31 goals in the Premier League, made Manchester United league champions, and played a key role in the Champions League final victory against Chelsea, won on penalties. The same year you won your career's first Ballon d'Or award. By the time you turned 23, the entire world knew your name. In 2009, Real Madrid transferred you for €94 million. This fee was, at that time, the highest transfer figure in world football history. You went to Madrid, wore the white jersey, and there began what would perhaps be the greatest rivalry in football history, a 10-year struggle with Lionel Messi. Over your 9 seasons at Real Madrid, you scored exactly 450 goals in 450 official matches, an average of 1 goal per match, an incredible level of efficiency never seen before in football history. At this club you won the Champions League 4 times, experienced 1 La Liga championship, and earned the title of Real Madrid's all-time leading goal scorer. Your shooting technique attracted the interest of sports scientists and biomechanics experts, among many others. In particular, the technique you used in free kicks gave the ball minimal spin but maximum speed. This technique is defined in the literature as the knuckleball effect, and it causes the ball to move unpredictably in the air, preventing goalkeepers from guessing its direction until the very last moment. At the same time, your vertical jump capacity was measured at up to 78 centimeters. This made you considerably superior to your opponents in headers. You kept your body fat percentage below 7% throughout your professional career. This, harmfully, caused a physical condition that your conditioning coaches described as a biological age years younger than your chronological age. This period also saw important developments in your personal life. In 2010, your first son, Cristiano Jr., was born. You never disclosed his mother's identity to the public, keeping this under your own control as a private matter. During your time at Real Madrid, you went through a serious legal process with the Spanish tax authorities. In 2017, you were officially tried on charges of tax evasion. In 2019, you reached a settlement involving a payment of 18.8 million euros and a suspended prison sentence. This process was one of the most difficult legal periods of your career, and it clearly showed the truth that not everything is as rosy as it looks from the outside. It was a period in which even a star earning millions of euros had to reckon with the state, with the law, with public pressure. In 2016, with the Portuguese national team, under the national jersey, you reached your first major international championship, Euro 2016. Playing against France in the final, in just the 8th minute of the match, you suffered a knee injury and in pain had to leave the field in tears. But despite this, sitting on the bench at the side of the field, you shouted instructions to all your teammates and motivated them as much as you could. Portugal won that match in extra time with a goal from Eder, and you, even though you couldn't play, through the tactics and motivation you gave, became a great captain who walked onto the field on crutches and lifted the trophy of that final. During this period, you also founded the Cristiano Ronaldo Foundation and supported various health, education, and humanitarian aid projects. You opened a museum under your own name in Madeira and established a hotel chain. Your relationship with Georgina Rodriguez began, shaping your family, which grew to 5 children. But while swimming in money, fame, and trophies, who knows, perhaps at night, in the silence after training, you were still hearing inside you that voice, the voice of that little boy in Madeira dreaming of a world where nothing was missing. In 2018, you transferred from Real Madrid to Juventus in Italy. You were 33 years old, and in the world of football, that age meant, for most players, approaching the end of their career. But you continued breaking goal records in Italy too, experienced Serie A championships in 2 consecutive seasons, and collected Italian football's most prestigious awards. However, your body, no matter how disciplined you were, had begun to submit to the unchangeable laws of human biology. Your sprint speed, from that peak of 33.6 kilometers per hour in your youth, was slowly declining downward, because the efficiency of the fast-twitch type 2 muscle fibers inevitably decreases with age. This was an unchangeable biological fact of the sport, and you felt it more and more sharply in your body with each passing season. In 2021, at 36 years old, you returned to Manchester United, to the club where you had worn your first jersey at 18 years old, years before. But this second period was not as smooth as that pure, childlike hunger of the first one. The team's performance did not meet expectations, and relations with the club grew strained. In an interview you gave in 2022, you openly expressed criticism of the club and the manager. These statements resulted in your contract being mutually terminated by the end of that same year. In 2023, you transferred to Saudi Arabia, to Al Nassr Club. This was a clear step that would even affect the commercial center of the football world, increasing the global visibility of regional football. As you approached the threshold of 40 years old, your old explosive speed, those 78-centimeter vertical jumps, were slowly receding, and you began to accept these as mere memories of the past. You rewrote your training programs according to your own needs. You were no longer working for maximum performance, but with priority given to sustainability and injury prevention. You no longer had your old power and speed, but your discipline and inner will never changed. You still trained 6 days a week, paying meticulous attention to your nutrition, your sleep, your rest routine. Your new life began to take shape not only on the field, but off it as well. The CR7 brand you founded turned into a billion-dollar business empire through sportswear, perfume, a hotel chain, and a chain of fitness clubs. At the same time, you carry the title of the most followed person on social media in the world, showing that you have become a cultural force beyond your football career. In the future, you are expected to move into management or transition full-time into the business world, to train young people through your own football academies, forming a new chapter of your life. You left behind one of the most enduring and most disciplined careers in football history. 5 Ballon d'Or awards, 5 Champions League titles, the all-time leading goal scorer for your national team, the title of the all-time leading goal scorer in official matches in world football history, with over 900 official goals. You wrote your name into history in golden letters. These are not just numbers, but the concrete proof of a legend who came from a poor island and brought the world to its knees through ambition, discipline, and a burning hunger to succeed. Yes, friends, we have reached the end of another one of our videos. Don't forget to like the video, share your opinions and thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Until then, take good care of yourselves. With love, with respect.